Hello, everyone, and good evening. I'm Don Arleth, and welcome to our main edition of World News Tonight here on TVP World. Tonight, our main focus is on the European economy. Will be able to keep up with the United States and China in the years and decades ahead? Well, it's not looking so good. According to the former European Central Bank chief, Mario Draghi, the situation at the moment is really worrisome. We've ignored it. Now we can't ignore it any longer. We'll have more on that in just a bit, but first up, let's take a look at tonight's headlines. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz is calling for peace talks between Kyiv and Moscow. Poland's security services have taken down saboteurs linked to Russia and Belarus. And Polish Paralympic athletes return home with 23 medals. Our lead story tonight, former ECB chief Mario Draghi is calling for the EU to invest €800 billion annually to stay competitive, sparking debate across Europe. His proposals for major reforms and increased funding have caused a stir within the bloc, with some countries pushing back on the high cost. Our correspondent in Brussels, Sasha Farbach, has more.
Mario Draghi is calling on the EU to boost annual investments by €800 billion to stay competitive with global powers like the US and China. In his latest report, the former ECB president warned that Europe faces an existential challenge due to sluggish growth and low productivity. Now, to tackle this, Draghi proposes bold reforms, such as easing rules for tech and telecom mergers and developing a unified strategy to secure essential raw materials for green and digital industries. However, the question of funding remains contentious, with countries like Germany and the Netherlands opposing new common debt in the past. Now, some MEPs from the EPP and Renew groups have voiced concerns, though they generally welcome Draghi's vision.
Never a policy proposal should start with asking for debt. I think that President Draghi does the right thing by looking at what the European economy needs. And he concludes that it needs investments. And now we will need to, together, find the best ways to close this investment gap. My priority is private investments. If that will not be enough, we should, of course, see how we can incentivize private investments, guarantee for them. If that will not be enough, we should look at the public effort, but that cannot be European only. It should be local, national, and European.
Very important, because without economic growth, you're not going to be able to pay for investment in defense, for the green transition, for the energy transition, for the digital transition, for the enlargement. So all these things, and as I said before, you won't be able to pay ultimately for the European welfare state. So growth has been, in my case, my party, Initiative Liberal in Portugal, the main priority for Draghi also. Not so positive thing, his insistence, which I understand from in terms of trying to accelerate the process, that the only way to finance this is joint European funds. It's not because we hate joint European funds as such, it's because we haven't found a way, and Draghi does not show a way, of not making joint European funds being the same as European taxes.
Draghi also highlighted Europe's high energy costs and struggling pharma sector as major hurdles, urging investment in advanced innovation hubs. Now, as Ursula von der Leyen's new European Commission team prepares to take office, Draghi's proposals are expected to ignite intense debate. Now, while his push for swift action is clear, member states will ultimately decide the fate of his ambitious reforms. Now, the coming months will show if Europe can rise to the challenge and maintain its influence on the global stage. Sasha Farbach for TVP World in Brussels.
A fresh push for peace from German Chancellor Olaf Scholz could bring both Russia and Ukraine together for talks. But there appears to be little optimism that his calls will be heeded, let alone hasten the end of the war.
As Ukraine fights for its life, the suffering of those living through Russia's invasion is clear for all to see. Now, in an interview with German broadcaster ZDF, Chancellor Olaf Scholz has called for Russia and Ukraine to get around the same negotiating table, and fast.
I believe that now is the time to discuss how we can get out of this war situation and move toward peace more quickly than it seems at the moment. There will be definitely another peace conference, and President Zelensky and I agree that it must include Russia.
In June, Ukraine hosted a summit in Switzerland to advance its blueprint for peace, but Russia was not invited. And back in 2022, Russia and Ukraine held peace talks in Turkey without success. However, Schultz says Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky agrees the time is right to involve the Kremlin, and according to one expert, any talks going forward will need to have a clear bottom line.
This negotiation, they cannot be just a surrender of Ukraine. Russia has also to understand that it's not only on Ukraine's side to end this war, it's the most important thing. Russia started this war and they have to also end this war in such a way that Ukraine is respected.
Olaf Scholz.
The political push from Chancellor Olaf Schultz comes as he faces pressure at home, with his coalition dealt a painful blow in the country's eastern state elections. In fact, those losses came at the hands of his fiercest political rivals, including the far-right Alternative for Germany party, who campaigned on cosier relations with Russia.
Mr. Schultz, well, he's coming out of a very difficult situation inside Germany, so maybe he needs a quick success outside.
But not everyone in Germany wants to get Russia involved. Reports from the German press agency suggest Scholz's own foreign minister, Annalena Baerbock, has this week accused his Social Democrats party of watering down support for Ukraine. And confidence levels are not high that this latest play will spell an end to the war.
In this moment, I'm not going to say it's not going to change, but in this moment, Russia only creates a narration that they want to talk, but they don't really want to talk at all.
How Russia responds remains to be seen as the conflict in Ukraine continues.
Now staying in Germany, a week after the far-right Alternative for Germany's historic victory in Thuringia, all eyes are on Brandenburg, the third Eastern German state, due to vote this month. As recent polls predict another AfD victory, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz hopes to convince voters to keep their trust in the ruling coalition.
Speaking to the German outlet ZDF on Sunday, Scholz admitted that the strong performance by the AfD was a serious matter.
You can't sugarcoat such results for yourself or others. The election results for the AfD in particular are depressing. There will now be a clear discussion about what needs to be done for the future of Germany.
The AfD won in Thuringia, came second in Saxony, and is expected to win in the upcoming state elections in Brandenburg. It is now the leading party in East Germany.
The vote for the Alternative for Germany is a vote against modernity. It's against Western values, against liberal values, against emancipation and liberalization of everyday life. And also, of course, it's a vote against immigration, although we have actually far fewer migrants in East Germany than in West Germany.
Due to Germany's past, centuries-old cultural and political divides shape the way the East and the West votes.
The relative dominance of the Alternative for Germany in East Germany does not yet translate into a very strong nationwide presence. It's a stigmatized and isolated party, and I guess it will remain so.
One thing is clear. AfD's rhetoric has permeated the national political discourse. Friedrich Merz, the CDU leader, seems to have adopted the AfD's anti-immigration theme.
The real problem is the continuing, uncontrolled immigration pressure. Let me give you a figure. For every 5 deportations that are successfully carried out today, and deportations to Afghanistan were suddenly possible last week, there are 100 new arrivals.
The ruling coalition also seems to have adopted the anti-migrant rhetoric. In the last week of August, deportations of Afghan criminals to Afghanistan were resumed. More policies aiming to tighten migration laws are also reportedly in the works.
And now we move east, where Latvia has confirmed that an armed Russian drone crash-landed on its territory during Saturday's wave of Russian drone attacks in Ukraine. Joining us now live from the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv with the latest is our Ukraine correspondent, Oz Chatterjee. Good evening, Oz. Now, what more can you tell us about this latest development?
Good evening.
The Russian charge d'affaires has been summoned by the Latvian government for a comprehensive explanation into what happened on Saturday. The Latvian government confirming earlier on today that a Russian drone, an explosive-laden Russian drone, crash landed in their territory. That's in the Gaigalava parish area, about 50 miles north of the Belarusian border. So this is a very serious incident for a NATO member, and they've demanded a comprehensive explanation from the Russian charge d'affaires. I'm not sure they're going to get it. They have launched an investigation into the incident. Now, it should be stated that the drone, while crash landing, the explosive device attached to the drone did not detonate, and it was later dismantled by Latvian authorities. But nevertheless, this is still a very serious incident. One remembers the similar incident happened in Poland about 2 weeks ago on the 26th of August. So these are becoming more frequent incidents where Russian munitions and drones are traveling into NATO members' territory. Kiev's been very strong, insisting that these NATO members intervene to try and stop these missiles and drones once they have entered their territory. But we haven't had much in the way of any action on that from these NATO members so far. Elsewhere, the Pokrovsk direction continues to be difficult as Russian forces reportedly continue to advance slowly in that direction. They've taken the town yesterday. The Russian Ministry of Defense claimed to have taken the town of Novohradivka in the east of Ukraine, which is not far. It's about 20 kilometers away from Pokrovsk. The Zelensky administration is talking lots about this. Commander-in-Chief General Syrskyi and President Volodymyr Zelensky have commented on the situation in recent hours, but the situation remains difficult there, and Russian forces are believed to still be advancing, even though the government here in Kyiv claims that advance has slowed somewhat.
All right, well, time will tell. Oz Chatterjee reporting from Kyiv. Thank you for your report and stay safe. Polish security services have taken down a group of saboteurs linked to Belarusian and Russian intelligence, which operated here in Poland. Their goal was to carry out acts of cyber warfare and bring about state paralysis, according to the Polish Interior and Digital Affairs ministers.
The number of cyber attacks carried out against Poland has doubled since last year, with more than 400,000 incidents reported so far in 2024. Poland has become one of the main targets for hackers.
You're well aware of the acts of sabotage that the Internal Security Agency and the police have been dealing with since January of this year. We have arrested 12 suspects in connection with planned and attempted sabotage operations.
Today, the Polish government says it has broken up a sabotage ring. The group was reportedly responsible for August's cyber attack against the Polish anti-doping agency. 250 gigabytes of sensitive data on Polish sportsmen and women had been leaked through Telegram.
Russian and Belarusian services had a specific goal: to extort information, to bring about individual and institutional blackmail, and in fact to conduct cyber warfare.
Poland is not the only country that has been battling cyber attacks. Allied intelligence agencies have been warning against the increased activity of Russian state security.
The FBI, Germany's Federal Domestic Intelligence Agency, and other international partners are currently warning against a cyber group of the GRU Unit 29155.
The Russian military intelligence unit is suspected of being involved in the poisoning of former Russian double agent Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia in the UK in 2018.
We do not see any immediate military threat against NATO countries because NATO is there to defend us, but we see a permanent and constant threat of terror attacks, cyber attacks and sabotage.
Germany has been targeted by a slew of cyber attacks recently. Berlin has accused Russia of carrying out operations against the governing Social Democrats Party, as well as companies in the defense and IT sectors.
Now let's take it across the English Channel, where the one meeting thought to restore relations between the European Union and the United Kingdom has been called off, at least for now. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, will reschedule their highly anticipated meeting to a later date, towards the end of the year. Our correspondent in London, Claudia Travinska, joins us now with more on the story. Good evening, Claudia. Now, what's the reason being given for this meeting not taking place as planned?
So the reason behind this meeting not taking place as of now, Don, is EU's disappointment with UK government exercising caution when it comes to reinstating youth mobility programs and exchange programs, especially the university exchange programs such as Erasmus, known in Europe. We know that this meeting, which was supposed to take place throughout the first 2 weeks of September, is going to be at least postponed until the end of October, which is going to prolong the process of restarting this EU-UK cooperation together. We know that this meeting was highly anticipated. It was first supposed to take place in July. Then there was a talk between those two leaders to postpone it to a later date. It was supposed to take place in September, and now we're moving it even further. This is an important setback for the United Kingdom, but not only, but also for the European Union, that is willing to look into having a big reset when it comes to the relationship between both, simply because there was a push from UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer when he met with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in Berlin and French President Emmanuel Macron. In both of these cases, there were talks of reinstating those youth mobility programs as well as university exchanges. And we also heard from Mr. Schultz, who said that British and German communities are very far apart because these exchange programs are no longer taking place. And this would be one of the things that they would like to focus on when it comes to the reset. As we know, the UK diplomats the EU diplomats, stressed that they're in dismay over the UK stance because Keir Starmer is apparently trying to act with caution as to not stir any trouble when it comes to pro-Brexiters, the opposition of his here in the United Kingdom. As I said, this could be potentially a setback when it comes to rebuilding that bridge between the UK and the European Union, as the works after this meeting, which is supposed to take place between the two, would have to take us into a next chapter, which would be spring of 2025, when certain programs and certain agreements would be made between the United Kingdom and the European Union. Back to you, Don.
Well, let's hope that the extra time will allow them to be better prepared to reset this relationship. Claudia Travinska joining us from London. Thank you very much for your report. The Paralympics have wrapped up in Paris, and the national teams are now counting their medals. But for most of these athletes, the medals are only a single part of their personal success.
The Polish Paralympic team is quite content. The yield of 23 medals gave them a respectable 16th position in the medal rankings. Paralympians have to focus on results just like other athletes. The run-up period to the games is all-consuming and demands their full attention. For table tennis player Dorota Bucław, it's hard to say whether preparation trumps results or the other way around.
When you prepare for such a game, you are thinking about it, and I think that when you are there and you are competing, then you are thinking about your preparation.
Any athlete faces challenges, both of the professional and the personal kind. More so than in regular competitions, Paralympians often have an additional challenge to overcome beside their physical limitations. Michał Dąbrowski won a bronze and silver medal in fencing in Paris, but making it to the competition was a close call for him.
A tumor threw a wrench in my plans. I didn't train for over half a year. From June I've been training really intensively to bring something back from Paris.
Because of the vulnerability of some of the athletes, Paralympic Games demand additional medical facilities to be set up during the event.
Probably we needed more because we have athletes that are on medication all the time. So probably this aspect is a lot more important. However, there are less athletes at the Paralympics because there are 4,000 comparing to 16,000. So it might be also logistically easier in some way.
Besides health, funding for individual athletes can be challenging. Paralympics can't hold a candle to the regular Olympic Games when it comes to interest and exposure. Sponsors are beginning to take an interest, but they do so more out of PR considerations rather than economic ones. Competing in the Paralympics since Sydney in 2000, Barbara Bieganowska-Zając struggled financially during the first 12 years of her career.
I didn't have a sponsor that could help me develop my passion, help me compete for the Paralympic Games.
Like regular sports people, Paralympians have to train hard for their successes. Unlike regular sports people, they often have their own unique challenges to overcome. From Warsaw, Michiel van Blommestein, TVP World.
Former ECB chief Mario Draghi is sounding the alarm, warning Europe that it's already lagging behind and will not keep pace with the United States and the Chinese economies if nothing is done. Therefore, to stay competitive, the European Union will have to find €800 billion per year for investment and fundamentally change the way it does business. Now, joining me here in the studio to discuss is State Secretary at the Polish Ministry of Funds and Regional Policy, Jan Szyszko. Hello, and thank you very much for joining us on World News Tonight.
Hi, pleased to be here.
So, this massive amount of money, 750 to 800 billion euro per year, that's up to 5% of GDP throughout the European Union. Where do we find the money?
It's a lot, and at the same time, it might not be enough. I mean, Draghi, with this report, what he's done, he's taken an X-ray of EU economic policy, which has so far been focused on increasing and stimulating competitiveness inside the bloc. And right now, he's saying, okay, this is working fine, but it's not good enough when we look at the US, when we look at China, and we actually have to look for the EU to be more competitive globally, externally. That's a new look, but that's something that's really needed. When you look at the GDP statistics, the European Union 20 years ago, it was rivaling to be the #1 economy of the world. We were ahead of the US. Right now, we are battling to be the third, defending ourselves against China. So, I mean, we are losing distance to the biggest economy in the world right now, and we do have to think how to be more competitive, knowing that our market is and will be more fragmented than the one of the States, and I mean even more so than one that the Chinese have, with a completely different system.
From some viewpoints, it looks like either further integration will be needed, a decision is going to have to be made for the European continent. Either move closer together or stay fragmented. I'm just going to give you one statistic. Compared to the United States, GDP per person employed is down 10 points over the last decade, from 77% to 67%. And if we look at that per hour, it's down also 10 points, from about 81% to 71% today. Therefore, it seems like Draghi's words that we've ignored this for a long time, and if we don't do something about it, it's going to be really difficult to catch up. What do you think, in your opinion, does the European Union as a whole need to do to make itself more competitive globally?
Well, we need to take bold investment decisions. We need to invest more than we ever did before. And we have a sort of a two-channel road ahead of us. The first one is increasing the competitiveness. That's deregulating, making life easier for big companies that are the ones that are big today, and for the economies that are developed today. That's investing in, well, to put it, it's simplistic, but often true, investing in the great firms of the most developed economies, such as the French and the Germans. At the same time, we also need to invest even more than we did so far in the European SMEs, the small and medium companies, on which the economies, like the Polish one, are built and stand today. So we need to give those companies a chance to become big European companies and then rival with competitors from the US or China, because it's only when Europe uses the potential of all its inhabitants, of all its regions fully to the full capacity, only then Europe will be able to compete globally. We won't do it only using the potential of the regions and of the countries that are developed today.
And policy-wise, based on the trajectory that we're currently heading, Do you think that they have identified the proper industries that need investment and that is going to indeed take place?
Well, I don't think it's a question of identifying 3 or 4 industries on the European level and saying, hey, look, guys, this is what we're going to be good at. It doesn't work like that. We need to have a multi-sectoral approach and use also the traits or the benefits that we already have nationally. We know that Dutch companies are great at microprocessors. So there are some interesting startups in Sweden, and we also see some battery production or health startups are growing and raising in Poland. So perhaps we need to look on national level what areas of expertise are being developed or are developed already today, and then on the European level invest in deregulating, in better and easier state aid to those companies to make their life easier, fighting for European influence in the world, to use the big words.
Now, where is this money going to come from? I posed that question at the beginning. The EU should move towards regular issuance of common safe assets to enable joint investment in projects among member states and to help integrate capital markets. Some say this is a controversial move towards Eurobonds. Do you think that this will, the French will agree, the Germans will agree, or some other major players in Western Europe will agree?
And the Dutch and the Danes and the northern members of the European Union. Well, the good news is that Europe has already done a milestone in raising new money by calling and setting into life the Recovery Fund in 2021. So things that seemed impossible 5 years ago happened and seemed to be achieved just a year or two after that. But we do need more national input or national investment into the common European budget. And yes, we probably do need more European level debt in order to facilitate those investments. But I mean, development doesn't grow on trees. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. Look at the States. I mean, the IRA, the unprecedented developmental package that President Biden has successfully implemented in the United States. It also came in with a record state intervention and unprecedented investment that also originated in further debt. So we need to be bold. The trick lies in actually having the debt taken for smart investments and not being splashed out like helicopter money, because then that doesn't make sense.
So you think the precedence for that was the European Recovery Act, due to the COVID pandemic? Concerning regulations, because, well, actually this is just a very general question, but it says something about the European Union. One of the large cellular phone producers is releasing a new model today, and there's a very different version from what is going to come out in Europe than from the United States. Yeah. And in fact, you can look at this from two different angles. The one that will be released in Europe will actually give you more freedom to get away from this company's own software, hardware monopoly, yet at the same time, some of the most advanced features such as AI will not be included for European countries. So the question is, does the regulation as such, which sometimes can hurt the development of technologies, is that standing in the way of innovation here on the European continent?
We need to find a balance for the European way of growth. We need to find a balance between protecting the consumer and stimulating growth in Europe. Consumer protection in Europe is at the best level, and it's a model globally. And we really do need to cherish that and protect that. At the same time, we need to we need to make life easier for the big companies to innovate in Europe, indeed. So the good example is actually the cellular operators market in Europe. When you look at the States, there are 3, maybe 4 federal level operators in the whole country. In Europe, you would find 3 to 4 in each member state because the market is so fragmented. So I would look for areas of improvement or areas for improvement by creating a more unified market in areas or sectors such as telecommunications, such as energy, where we can really make it more competitive and lift the barriers of entry and barriers for companies that are present nowadays.
Yeah, energy is another one we didn't quite have the time to get to, but maybe next time. Jan Šiško, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate your thoughts. And that concludes this edition of World News Tonight. Thank you all for joining us. Goodbye, and we'll see you next time.